tempo. Thank you.
All right, yeah, guys, thanks actually for coming out on a Wednesday night. I know it's tough to get into these things, and hopefully, we'll have this recorded and edited up, and it'll go on the Tempo YouTube channel too. And any questions you have, just jump right in, definitely. As Johnny said, and I know many of you guys on the call, my name is Chaka Benson. I like to think of myself as an electronic musician, just in a general sense, and synthesis probably next, but just artists in general. And I just love modular synthesizers, right? I try to keep my gas in check, but I think you guys all know how it is. And I started off kind of small, humble, and as I kept going and going, the focus has really kind of been on performance. I do have some recorded material out there in various places, but I feel like really my focus really is on live performance. And so I'm always looking for ways to stretch out a set. So if I think a lot of you guys on the call have probably already played Nick's Garage. Pretty much if you have a central nervous system, you can play Nick's Garage. So that's a good thing. That's a joke. That's the kind of setting where you have to play for 2 hours. So, anything where you can kind of build on a theme and then kind of vary it and be able to return to it is always good for me, right? And I kind of, not recent. I've kind of been toying with this idea in various ways, using switches. A lot of you probably use sequential switches to move things around in a patch, right? It's a similar kind of concept here. But before I really kind of get into it, let me kind of lay out how I'm going to go forward. So, just giving you guys a little bit of an intro. I'm going to talk a little bit about mixing. I probably don't have to linger on that too much, and how that kind of dovetails into the idea of matrix mixing. And then, where you have just a basic matrix mixer, and then some of the features you might want to consider in building a patch, and why there's some different features out there for different modules. And I'm going to go through probably 6 or 7 modules in a little bit of detail, not a lot, just to kind of highlight what the feature sets are and think about, oh, okay, I see some of the themes out here, why I would want to have this versus that. And then, you can start to think about how to tell or what you would select for your set, right? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about, the matrix mixer I'm using, because it's a little bit unusual, and why I picked that. And then, a little bit about the modules, and then I'm going to do, as Johnny laid out, I'm going to do some live patch demos, right? And then afterwards, what I'll do is I'll give some links for you guys to take away. It's just some, light reading, some materials you can, kind of take things a little bit further and give you some ideas for a few patches that I probably won't cover tonight. All right, so I think with that, I'm going to jump into mixing itself. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So you guys are kind of familiar with the typical setup, right? Where you have inputs going into a board, and then potentially have different mixes that you want to send out, right? And you could picture these as people who want to monitor the mix. It could be whoever, it could be engineers, it could also be people in the band wearing headphones. right? And then you could also imagine that, you know, each one of these folks might want to get their own particular mix. If I'm a bass player, I might want to hear the bass and the drums more pronounced, or maybe I want to hear a click track where these guys don't hear, that type of thing. So basically I want to hear different things that are coming into the board, right, at different levels. So this is really the basic concept, right? And it's, if you think about it, and let me take this over here and get that ready for you. If you think about it, this really is kind of a checkerboard, because you have, in this scenario, you've got 4 inputs and what is this, 5, 8, 12 outputs. So that's like a 4 by 12, where these 4 different inputs could potentially go to all these different places, right? So, you know, that's the basic idea. Let me move on to my next slide here. So I wanted to show you, if I can pull that up. I'm not going to show that yet. Okay. Basically, what I wanted to show, and I don't have ready access to it, is sort of that checkerboard approach. And what you would have really is, imagine like a 4 by 4 checkerboard, right? And in its most basic format, you would have a attenuation at each one of those points. Okay, this actually would work a lot better if I found that diagram. So let me find that. One second here. Just had that guy open. So we want to something like this. Sorry about this. I had this ready and they closed up on me. All right, well, this will actually suffice for what I want to show. Okay. Because this is the sort of a classic idea of what we're talking about here. Okay. All right. Yeah, this is a lot better. So, yeah, so this is your basic, your classic Doepfer mixer, the A138. They have a bunch of different modules in that series. This is A138M for matrix. There's like a N or M. There's different formats for what type of mixer there is. So in this one, you know, and Doepfer is known for very, you know, very clean, very stable inputs and outputs. And I don't have this mixer, but I've known people who had this, and this is very clean. I've actually, you know, it just does what it says on the tin. It doesn't have any other really slick features. But basically, what you have is your inputs, right? 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then your outputs, A, B, C, and D here. And I believe these switches are off and on for the entire lane for the output. So that's the basic idea. So, you know, when we were talking about that, you know, that band chart that I was showing, it really kind of translates the same way here. And so we can think about inputs as not just being things like sound. They could be, they could be CV, right? Because any kind of signal is really voltage in this sense. So you have the classic examples, and I don't want to get too far ahead of it, but just to give you an idea of what type of matrix mixers are out there. So like that one is really kind of like a simple, really simple matrix mixer that doesn't have a whole lot of features, right? It basically just sets the game. So if let's say, now we can start talking about some of the different examples once we've kind of gone through some of these different mixers. But let's say I've got 4 different filters, right? Like maybe a WASP filter, a chaos filter, I don't know, and maybe a stereo filter like a QPOS or something with C and D. So these outputs could be, you could just imagine those going to the inputs of filters, right? So this is like one example of a patch. And then your oscillators could be coming in, you could have 2 different, or it could be just whatever 4 different oscillators, right? So if, let's say, the first one was like I don't know, make noise DPO, right? And I wanted to send it to the WASP filter. Well, the DPO is here, the WASP filter is here. I would turn up the gain on that. I wanted to send it to the QPOS later on in my set. This would be off, and then come up with C and D. So you kind of get the idea. It's really, like, if you think about it, it's really the sends on a conventional mixing desk, right? So now, instead of having to repatch, like, okay, I really wish I could have used this sound in a different way, someplace else in my set, maybe, I'm using Platts, let's say, and where I can switch to a different voice, maybe switch my melody up and send it to a different filter sometime later in the set. So I can reuse that one voice. I'm not stuck with just that one patch, right? That's just one use case, right? So in that scenario where I laid out, we have a bunch of oscillators and a bunch of filters you could go to. You could think about mixing CV to create, interesting modulations that could go anywhere, right? I think when you get started on this, I would try and keep it simple, because as you're starting to play this and you start to get into that flow state, you'll lose track of what your inputs are and what your outputs are. You're just knowing that you're making nice sounds, And I am going to show some of that. I'm going to switch the camera and show some of that as we go. But I want to show a couple more mixers. Let's see here. This guy here. Another simple one. Again, it's like the spirit of Eurorack to me. It doesn't have to be these like sort of God modules that do everything. Sometimes the really basic mix and match kind of gives you more functionality, and you kind of build out sort of like a tool or something that you want to be able to evolve and move around in. But you see how this is laid out? It's an 8x8. So you basically have gain knobs for those A through H laid out this way. So it's a different kind of layout, right? It's not like you have grids, an 8x8 grid where you have attenuators at each node. You play around with it with these checks. So it's a different scheme to get to the same point. Let's see. Let's take a look at. I think the 4MS makes a pretty good one. Yeah, the VCAM. Yep. Okay. And this is a pretty big module, right? But it's the same concept, your inputs, your outputs. And these, okay, so now I kind of touched on it, but you can start to think about feedback patches too, where let's take that one example where we had oscillators going to different filters. So maybe we had 3 filters, maybe that last one's a stereo filter or a multi-mode filter. So something like a QPOS where you've got stereo inputs, stereo outputs, but they are multi-mode on the output. I could take one of those outputs and feed it back. Or I could look at my entire grid and say, okay, at a certain point, juncture point, I can start feeding these things back in, so I can feed what was an output back to an input and then start to play around with the levels. So this gives you that fine control so you don't overdrive that particular thing. A lot of times when you get things to resonate in Eurorack, you can kind of drive them in interesting ways with modulation, whether it be pitch or, if you just play it like it's play it like it's a melody, or if you send some kind of other modulation like an alpha or an envelope and make that sound kind of dance around that sort of peak of destruction. And you find those things around like resonance tips or, feedback where you're just about to, blow the speakers, or it doesn't have to be that way at all. You could see these systems break apart and, you can do something with what results in that. So it's a lot of creative options you can start to think about using feedback, where it's not like, okay, I'm going to sit back and, come up with some particular sound. I'm going to try and explore what my options are and then reuse what I found when I get there. So it's, a way to explore. So I talked about that a little bit. Let's see. We can. I think I want to show one more module before I show you what I'm actually going to use. Yeah, for sure. We can show this one. Yep. So probably this one is I would say, has a lot of hype around it. It's sort of based on old pin style matrix. It comes with these little TRS cables that you make the junctures with your inputs and your outputs. It's nice. What you probably need is a ton of attenuation. I believe these guys act as VCAs, these junctures points as well. But it's considered one of the nicer mixers. I know these guys are all normaled against each other. There's certain tolerances that are built into it. So that's kind of like one end of the spectrum. This is probably the most venerable but nicest one in terms of its features, its feedback options, and I didn't mention these mute buttons. So you see how you're getting away from that simple Doepfer where you just have gain at the junctures. You have more options. And now I can, and then you have other more simpler modules that just do the job, do the doggone thing. And then we're going to talk about what I'm going to use in some of our demos tonight. So here we go. Sorry, guys. That's good enough. So I'm going to use this guy here. So you notice it doesn't have the, this is actually a 4x4 matrix mixer, but it doesn't have 4 attenuators. It has a clever way of making up for that with just two columns of attenuators. Yeah, it functions as a full matrix mixer. The emphasis on this guy is really CV. Oh, I should probably say what it is. It's the Yuhei, I think that's how you pronounce that, Yuhei civilization. I think it's 8 HP. And this is this company's first Eurorack module. But they're well known for VSTs and making like software synthesizers. I think it's Zebra, if I'm correct. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah. So the other interesting thing about this is the high quality digital audio. The DACs that are inside of here are really high quality, so, and they're DC coupled. So you can obviously, since it's CV, you can use CV and audio in this module, and it's very fast. It's very smooth. The other thing that's cool about it, and we won't get into tonight, it might be maybe a subject for later workshops, but it has 3 other modes. It has a sequential switch in it. It has a CV recorder, and it has a quadraphonic panner in it as well. So it's pretty powerful in terms of what it can do. And it looks pretty simple in terms of its interface, but it has a lot going on under the hood. And so, we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about that. But, I'm mostly going to try and keep the discussion about matrix mixing and not too much about what civilization does in particular. Although, one of the things that, so we looked at, the feature set of some of these other mixers, right? That 4MS one that had attenuation and mutes. This has the same kind of thing, and also has attenuverters as well. So that becomes interesting with some of our feedback, where if our signal starts to get to a certain level, we can attenuate that and then invert the signal. And you can start to think about side chaining and other. Again, like I don't want to go too far down the road. Like that's one of the patches that I'm going to have you guys, suggest. I won't build tonight, but you can do some pretty good audio effects with with a matrix mixer as well, like mid-side kind of side chaining type of techniques as well, where inversion comes in handy. You can have something that comes in as a signal ducks out, right? Like, so you can start to have like those types of effects. All right, let me get a reset here. I've been talking a lot. Anybody need me to stop, slow down? Any questions? All right, I think.
Looks like we're good, Chaka.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so like I talked about that. All right, so the first, I guess we're going to start getting into the demos then. And the first one is going to be just, let me copy this into a file so you can see what I'm doing here. Okay. So the first one, I'm going to go with, this is going to be, we're basically going to, I would call it swapping pitch. but more or less we're going to be generating pitch CV from these 4 places, right, on these 4 channels. So if we're looking at this thing here, these 4 pitches are going to go into these 4 inputs, 1, 2, 3, and 4. The marbles, Tuesday, the ornament and crime, and then the 4th one, I just have like some sample and hold noise going in there. So you can kind of see what's going on. And because I also want to show one of the other features in Civilization is it has a quantizer in there. So if I'm sending sample and hold, I can quantize that sample and hold and get a scale. And I'll explain what that is for those of you who aren't familiar with that concept. So I'll have these things going on these 4 inputs, and then the outputs are going to be, so if this is pitch, these are going to be volt per octave inputs on these 4 different, want to call them oscillators, but Platts is an oscillator. Planck is really kind of a drum. So is Basimilus, Iteritas alter, and then the cloud terrarium is an oscillator. So now you can think about, all right, I have these pitch CVs, you know, in a straight up patch without this guy in the middle. I'd be sending pitch CV and kind of locked into that concept. Instead, I can think about having maybe in the first part of my set, maybe I have these all muted and I just have, you know, 1, 2 go to 1, 2 to go to 2, 3 to 3, 4 to 4, etc. And then set that up so it's all muted and then bring things in and out as I go. The other thing you can think about is actually having 2 particular inputs going to an output, right? Like, so maybe I have marbles, you know, playing very sparse notes or doing something that's in counterpoint to, you know, my quantized sample and hold here. Let's call that what it is, but it's going to be noise that we're sampling. Right, so now you can start to think about mixing and matching. And that's why I was saying earlier, where once you start just playing around with this, it just becomes interesting. Well, you're not even thinking about, oh, I need to send 1 to 3 and then 2 to, you're just actually just kind of creating and painting around with these inputs to these various outputs. So, you know, looking at that and having that general idea, I'm going to switch my camera now and then start making some sounds. Let's see. Okay, so one second here.
Can you stop sharing?
Sure. Let's see here. You guys see my camera on the modular, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. I might have to reposition things a little bit. No, it looks okay. It's framed okay. So you can see the Civilization module right here, right? And I've got that setup we were just talking about. Right now, okay, so let me explain a little bit about how it works. Let me turn some sound on. Okay, so the left-hand side represents the inputs, and the right-hand side of these pots are the outputs, right? So I'm just in a regular state here. So let's say, oh, and by the way, right now the sound that we're listening to is that first one, is the Platts. right, so let's tweak around on that. Okay, so the Plex is the first one. So let's click on that. And so, all right, so I'm going to say the first input, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So the first input is coming from my marbles. So I want to send it to the Plex, which is the first output. So how do I do that? 1 goes to 1. So I can start to turn that up. So you can start to hear pitch go into it. See? So we can turn that back out. So notice when it gets gray, there's no pitch going at all. Now, when I go the opposite direction, it's going red, I'm inverting that signal. So notice it's going so low in pitch. So bring it back up. That's nothing. And that's as much as I want to give it. So that first voice is getting that first CV and it's not getting anything else. So I'll turn that back down to nothing. And now the second input, we have coming from the Tuesday. We could also send that here as well. That's like on nothing. And bring that up. I can start to mess around with the Tuesday. So you can hear that. That's a little bit of subtle difference. Let's go back down on that. Turn up the third one. So let's just kind of scan through these, right? And you can notice what the difference is as I scan through them. So the input going to the fourth output. There you go. So 2 going to 1. Going to 1. Not much of a difference there. 4 going to 1. Let's try it different. This is number 2. Number 2 was our plonk. That's our output there. See, I have nothing. You hear that pitch coming in on that drum. Send some to the second from 3. To the second from 4. So that's actually getting a combination, right? So let's scan through. So the first input is not sending anywhere. The second input is sending to 1 and 3 and 4, but we're only listening to 2. So let's turn that up. So let's take it back out. Okay, so you can see that difference. It's getting some and 2. The same here. Inverted. Okay. And I can kind of scan through. Let's try that with the fourth one. get the idea there, right? Basically what I was doing really was just mixing CV and throwing it around to the different parts of the system once I set it up. Right, so let's go back and look at what I set up before and try and make sense out of it. I'm going to share the screen again. Okay, so let's look at it over here. Okay, so again, like, you know, that sort of all these different melodies were kind of playing in and out of our different sound pieces. So I wasn't really kind of restricted to thinking about, I only have this one melody source, and I just was kind of letting loose. I didn't really think about it too much. One thing I didn't, and I'll go back and show you, is how this piece works. And what it sounds like without, you know, without any kind of quantizing, and the fact that you can use different scales and have a different sound against that. And that's like one of the built-in features of the module that makes it, you know, pretty cool, I think. So let me swap back over. I'll stop sharing and move the camera back. So what we can do here, we can go back to this main page, and then there's configuration underneath of that. So you get to that just by like long pressing any one of those, and you get to these alternate menus, right? And so what you have is these three different functions on this first page, and then the second page is 3 additional functions, right? So moving up, just so I can end up where I want to be, you have a clock divider, clock source, and a quantizer. So this guy here is your quantizer. So I can press that, and really these colors are the scales, right? So if I go all the way to the left, I'm basically saying I don't want any quantizing on the output of 1, 2, 3, or 4. So remember, we have noise, basically just sample and hold going in. But if I turn this, so each one of these colors is a different scale. So let's go back to that page here. So right here is your quantizer, the top one. So we're saying each one of these colors kind of corresponds to a different scale. I'm not going to tell you each one of them, but you have things like major, natural minor, pentatonic minor, those types of things, right? Turn that down a little bit. Yeah, so you have the, you know, the different types of scales here. So as we're in this mode, I'll just pick some different scales, but really, because we've got the sample and hold coming in on number 4, we just want to kind of quantize this 4th one, right? So it's not just noise coming through. We can get out of that. We can come into, we've got 4th output that we want to send something to. So let's just pick any one of them. So that 4th one, actually sending anything right this second. Okay. Here we go. Well, let's leave that for now. What I was actually expecting to happen there was to be able to mix and match against those. All right, let's turn that back. All right, let's move on from that. I think you guys are you guys still with me? Does everybody kind of get the general idea of what I'm putting out there?
Yes.
Royce, what do you think? Can you see yourself using something like this in your patches, or?
Yeah, it's definitely have to play around with it for a little while.
Yeah, because I'm throwing a lot of stuff out there. I realize I'm talking pretty fast and I'm moving through a lot of different scenarios. I'm thinking about maybe we'll build another patch. We'll talk about what we're going to do, and then kind of do it together. This way, it might be a little bit more clear. So let's look at swapping VCOs and filters. Let's look at that next. What do we want to do here? Okay. All right, so we're going to use Platts. Here and here. Platts has two outputs, not stereo. So all this will be is just like the raw output coming out of Platts. And then let's see, we can use Plonk in this case. And we'll use BIA here. And so now I can put these sounds, the sounds that are coming out of these, against different filters. So let's say QPAS channel 1, QPAS channel 2, what else sounds good? What do we got up here? Okay. We can use let's use, I'm tempted to do our feedback patch now and just use this extra output. But let's not do that just yet. Let's pick something else here. Well, I know. We'll just use a natural gate 1 and 2. Just use one of the and then maybe trigger that. Okay, so now what we can do now, so the Platts can bounce, like you can imagine, because the Platts have two different outputs. Like the Platts has a wavetable mode, and it has two different waves coming out of those. So you could have one of the waves going here and here, or mixing it around. As far as like how much of what you want to send to these. You can almost think of these as effects. Another thing I probably could have did was I have an FX8 in here too. Maybe we should do that instead. We'll do this. And then, yeah, so you can bounce waves around from these different effects, right? Or just have a different amount or vary the amount that you're sending to a given place over time, and then give yourself a little bit more of an open lane to, you know, to build out a motif or a sound. Like I said, as opposed to being locked into maybe something that's already kind of preset. And then, you know, and I haven't really started to talk about this yet. One of the modes in this particular piece, this sequential switch, you can set up these scenarios, and then you can basically have a gate sequence against these things. So you can make a Platts move against an FX8 on a like kind of a gate, or on kind of a, you know, on a rhythm, let's say, and have these things mixing and matching sort of in real time. So you can have patterns and gates to do these sounds, and then maybe save those off even during the course of your set, mess it up a little bit, and then recall that saved state that you liked from earlier. Like, that's how I tend to like to use saving, not so much saving ahead of time, because I never remember what I saved. But trying to use the save functionality during the course of a set, maybe one or, you know, very thinly, not like in a deep way, so that you can kind of go back to the state of things. It allows you to stretch out a little bit more and, you know, get those 2 hours that you want to get in that set. So, okay, let's go ahead and patch this guy up. I'm just going to put some sound on to listen to. Actually, I don't really have anything patched up for you guys. But yeah, let's go ahead and patch this thing up. So coming in, we've got the 2 lanes coming from Platts. So we're going to just repurpose what we had before, since we know where those are going to go. And now they're going to go out of Platts. So the first one is that kind of yellowish, right? And then the last 2, where do we want to go with those? Here, order and crime. And we've got Plonk and Bacillus. Right here. So that's our inputs. And where do we want to take those? We've got 4 outputs. Let's get those out. We're going to go to QPass 1 and 2. And then we're going to go to FX8 and natural gate with the last 2. Okay. All right, let's clear these out. All right, so we've got our inputs and our outputs set up on our civilization. Let's see what we can do with this thing. So the first one is going to be plats. Let's open up 2 of those. So these inputs are going to these outputs.
What do you want?
No sound just yet. There's a knock. See what we got here. Let's start with just the plat sound. So I've got that plat sound coming to QPAS, and then the QPAS going out to here. So I should be hearing something. There we go. Let's just give him some pitch. Okay. Yeah, I was having problems with the module earlier. Looks like I'm having problems again. But let's see what we can do with this scenario here.
You're done.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay. So right now I'm just sending pitch to the clouds or whatever. So I want to see if I can get different things going here. And I'm probably, I don't know if you guys can see what's going on there. Give me 1 second. So I realize we're getting kind of short on time. This is what I'm seeing here. Okay. So I think what I want to do, since we're kind of running out of time at this point, and is I'm going to lay out a couple more of the the patches. And what I may do is give you guys a follow-up and put that out there. But let's take a look at some of the other scenarios that I was thinking about. We have another idea for a patch could be moving triggers to different drums, right? So you could have gate sequences coming from different places, let's say, right? So for instance, you might have a gate sequence coming from, sequencer, I'll just say sequencer 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in that case, you could be playing different sequences and then mixing and matching those guys and sending them to different drums. Or, sending these gates to different, just different locations, different modulation points, maybe to an envelope, generator, that type of thing. So like I could have different sequences that I want to mix and match. So, like I said, we only have about, 10, 15 minutes left. I'm going to try and build this. Like I said, I'm going to put out a couple of these in the next, couple of weeks. I'm going to be on vacation next week, but I think I can put some of this stuff out in the coming weeks using that matrix sequencer that we showed. So this would be one idea. So being able to move gate sequences around sort of interchangeably will be one kind of cool thing to do. And yeah, the one thing I think I didn't have a time to get into, and my gear is like not really cooperating tonight, but definitely a patch where we can use feedback. So let's look at this one and kind of modify that. So I mentioned that the QPOS has different modes, right? It's got like high pass, low pass, band pass, and then it's got like this other thing, smile pass, it's called. Yeah, so you could be in one mode here, and then you could use that output and then route it back in to your input. And what that's going to do is create a feedback loop. And you're probably familiar with what that kind of sounds like, right? But when you are combining that with an input sound and then kind of like the characteristics of that filter, and so what that feedback is going to sound like, you can have some measure of control with, and then you can be able to start to have sort of that main sound layered in with that feedback, where you can kind of manipulate that with the filter. It can kind of get pretty cool, pretty trippy. So I'm definitely going to do that for you guys. I'll probably do the feedback patch first, because I maybe even should have started with just to show what the possibilities are on the far end, and then go in with some of these simpler examples. But yeah, feedback is probably what where you really want to get kind of get some really kind of far out and some really experimental ideas. And with using the module I was showing you, like at this point, instead of continuously going up and up and up, I could have gone back the opposite direction to push down the amount of feedback that I was getting, so to make it more manageable. So that's another possibility there too. So I have a bunch of links. Johnny, should I give those out now, or do you want to put those maybe in the event page? People can get to those later.
Either way, yes, I can put them up later. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'll send those to you. I'll DM those links to you. But what I have in there, and we can look at one of these. Yeah, this was the graphic I actually wanted to show from the beginning. So that was one of the links. But this, he's at the bottom here where, yeah. Because there was the one from that had more, had a bunch of links along with that. So it's like a page that had a bunch of links. Yeah, here it is.
Yes, we can put it up once we have the YouTube.
Okay.
On the description, put all those links there.
Yeah, this was the one I wanted. So if you go to ModWiggler, then there's a page and it's got a bunch of links.
Right. Cool.
Where there's like more in-depth discussion about these things. And you can take it pretty far. Okay, so I think, Jenny, I'm going to send these links to you when we're done here. And but
Sure.
you guys have any other questions? I'm curious what you guys think after you've seen it, like how you might want to use something like this. I can ask you guys the question. Or do you have any questions for me? For sure. I mean, you know, if you can't think of anything right now, you know, just reach out to me at any time. You know, I'm on Instagram. You could probably DM me, or, you know, Facebook DM. That's cool too, or through the group.
Sure.
Always.
Well, modular synthesis is Chinese to me, but I kind of learned quite a bit tonight, and I enjoyed your presentation, Chaka. Thank
Cool,
you.
thanks. Yeah. So the mixing part, yeah, I think that's something you can grab onto.
Yeah.
So,
Seems good.
all right, gang. So I guess that's it.
Very good. Thank you very much, Chaka. If no one has any questions for Chaka, we'll wrap it up for tonight. And again, thank you, Chaka, for the presentation. I'm looking forward to get those links that you were talking about.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll send those right out.
Very
Thanks,
good.
Jenny.